and welcome to another episode of Shoes Off Inside, but this is a one-on-one episode. So thanks for tuning in. Today's topic I really, really care about deeply because it has to do with the state of journalism in this country. And as many of you know, there are a lot of not so good things happening to the business, legacy media networks, publications, et cetera, due to the current climate in Washington and the current administration. We're going to get into that, but that's why I wanted this particular person to come on the show and talk to me about this. I am joined now by Rebecca Sun, who is a writer, cultural critic, and journalist, and she was formerly senior editor at The Hollywood Reporter. But now, like me, we are both independent journalists, and we're going to get into all of this. But first, Rebecca, so good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me, May. I'm very honored to be on your show. And I feel like this is a conversation I'm itching to have. So thank you so much for this topic.
No, thank you for being willing to come on, because I did think about who do I want to talk to about this? And it struck me that even though I know a lot of people in journalism, a lot of them are still tied to a media company, whether that be a newspaper or a network. And I'm sure that they cannot freely talk about this particular issue like you and I can. And that's why I was like, you know what, I'm calling Rebecca to see if she wants to come on. And the last time we saw each other, we were talking about this before we started recording. The last time we actually saw each other was at an Oscar party, not formally at the Academy Awards, but it was an Oscar-related party when Parasite won that year.
Yeah.
And
2020.
Was that 2020? Yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago because the world is so different now, right? Well, let's catch up a little bit, though. So you were at the Hollywood Reporter for several years. Right? Doing great work and really writing a lot of stuff about the diversity and the improvement in representation in Hollywood and the media, et cetera. But then something happened. Tell me, I don't know exactly what happened. Were you let go or were you, what happened?
Yeah.
You were laid off.
And,
okay.
And it's so funny because like you mentioned, that last time we saw each other excuse me, February 2020, that was 2 layoffs ago. So I was laid off. I was laid off 2 months after that party, April 2020, if you remember. Pandemic happened. Everybody went into lockdown in March. And then a lot of companies started, furloughing or laying off their employees. And so that happened to the Hollywood Reporter. And I'll say this, it's very interesting because when I was laid off and I asked for some feedback on, job performance, the executive who laid me off, who I had never spoken to before, she's like, the kind of person you bring in to.
Oh, the hatchet man, the hatchet woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was like, no, you did great. We loved having you. It's just that, we have to really concentrate on, she said, diversity, inclusion, and agencies, because I was the talent agency beat reporter. Those things are great, but we just really have to focus on our core business right now, like film and television. And so that was the feedback I got about why I was laid off. And it's funny because D&I was not an official beat. It was not anybody's beat. It was just something that I'm actually glad that was something I became known for. I just sort of covering that stuff. If you remember, again, prior to 2020, that wasn't really a subject area of interest to.
Yeah, nobody was really mentioning diversity, inclusion, and
it was literally something I would do in my spare time, when I finished my regular beat duties. But anyway, so that was the feedback. So that was April 2020. I got laid off. May 2020, George Floyd died on camera. Everything changed. And by the end of the year, the Hollywood Reporter had rehired me, this time as senior editor overseeing a new beat, which was diversity and inclusion. And then,
okay, wait a minute. I'm just going to interrupt for a second. That seems like an impossible role now that would not exist given what's happening.
Absolutely. And even at the time, I recognized that opportunity for what it was, which was a limited time opportunity. And I had a lot of time during that summer I was laid off. It was just, on the sidelines, attending protests, but not, just as a layperson, not writing, not publishing anything. And so I had a lot of time to think about, okay, well, what do I have this opportunity now to really take a beat and imagine what I would like my next step to be. And so I had already decided that these kinds of subjects are what I would like to be devoting all of my working time to covering. And so when THR came back with that offer, it aligned with what I personally wanted. And I also recognized it as this window of like, okay, I don't know how long they're going to invest resources and attention to
Yeah.
this. So I'm just going to squeeze as much. It was very opportunistic. And
Yeah.
I think
Well,
it's
good for
fine to
you.
say that. I'm going to
Yeah. Good for
squeeze as
you.
much mileage out of this for my own sake, as well as for the sake of these stories getting told as I can. I got late. So the reason why I'm no longer at the THR, and people are so polite about it, they always say like, oh, you left THR, or like you're no longer there. And I'll be straight up. I'm like, I'm no longer, I was ashamed the first time I got laid off because it was so new to me. The second time I was like, no, I got laid off. And again, I really appreciate when people are saying that they were so surprised that it happened. I appreciate that. But I was not surprised because of two things. One is journalism. Like journalism, like I'm far from the most talented journalist to lose their job. So many of my peers, including at THR, who I found more admirable, also lost their jobs. So A, journalism, that's why I'm not surprised. B, like I would not have been a very good reporter on DEI issues if I didn't know that the scythe would come for me, because I was reporting that. I was like, literally, I was reporting about companies shedding their DEI sort of personnel.
Knowing that you were in that very position.
So of course it would
Right.
happen.
So you were prepared for it almost.
Yeah, it was more of a when, not if. I just want to know when.
Yeah.
And so the day it happened was very abrupt. I was in the office and got called in. Like they love doing this, 4:45 p.m. But the HR was like, "We'll give you until the end of the day to before your email access is cut off." I was like, "It's 4:45
Oh
right
my
now."
God. Wow. Wow. Well, clearly they have no idea how journalism works and how a story comes together. So you can't cut someone off like that. Well, let's talk about then why we're having this conversation, which is, the state of journalism, right? Cuts are being made constantly. Just today, another round of layoffs at ABC have been announced. I think 200 people are going to be let go. This is on top of several other rounds that have been happening across the board, right? So it's not just layoffs, but it's just the change in the whole idea of proper journalism.
Yeah.
Right? Truth, fact, that kind of work that we should be familiar with and we should have in this country that seems to be disappearing. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all part of it's all a part of this steady erosion, right?
Yep.
In our industry, that this real devaluation of our work and of the
importance of it, the importance of it in a democratic society, right? Where we have this idea of freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of the press.
I see this more clearly than ever now that I am an independent journalist, and I had, and I'm still like keeping an eye on like job listings. Although like today, 8 or 9 months in, I've really dramatically slowed down my job applications to legacy media, because it's for multiple reasons, which we can get into, but I still see it, right? So I still have a LinkedIn, and I'll go to like the whole LinkedIn job section. So if you go filter under like writing or whatever, you get listings for journalism, you get listings for corporate communications, and you get listings for like copywriting. So like copywriting and corp comm, it'll be like still fairly junior level, 5+ years of experience, right? And that salary range is going to be around $100,000, right? I saw an opening for breaking news reporter in politics at Reuters. And it was asking for at least 5 years of experience, but I think it was closer to 10. And pretty consistently at that level of experience, outlets are offering like $70,000. But what I saw consistently was like, if I had gone into corporate communications, like at this with the same level of experience, it's like double the salary.
Oh yeah,
It's like
that's for sure.
you're flirting with sub
$200,
$200,000
yeah.
a year.
Yes.
But like for journalists, it's like it took me like 10 to 15 years to crack 100K. I'll start using numbers because I do think that that's very illuminating for people.
Yeah, people get
And
that.
and
Yeah.
what you see is like a devaluation of the work. Because again, when I say this, I want to be very careful because all work is like dignified, right? But work that is in service of selling a product, right, or promoting a company is literally compensated more than work that is supposed to be like informing the public
Yeah.
with the wire service about what
That's
is
right.
happening in Washington, D.C.
That's
It
right.
is just not considered valuable. It's
Yeah.
like now I feel like I'm starting to understand how teachers feel.
Okay, Rebecca, I'm so glad you just brought that up because I was just going to draw that same comparison because I've been a journalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paid pretty well in my industry for some time. But yes, you're right. The comparison to other fields, it's not the same, and especially teaching. And so I've been a professor as well,
Mm-hmm.
right, at two different university, and it is appalling
Yeah.
what teachers and professors are paid for what they're expected to do, the responsibility that teachers and professors have to educate, right, young minds.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're supposed to be doing. And the pay is just paltry. And so it's really this imbalance in our society, as to what's important and what isn't as much so. That's what's so heartbreaking to me.
Absolutely. I don't necessarily fault like the individual like institutions or there's just no money. There's no money in well, let me back up actually and be a little bit more clear. Like the money is being misdirected.
Yes, I was going to say there is money.
There's
There is money. It's just being used
It's
in different
not-
ways.
That was what was so frustrating about being at like THR, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Is that so, it's so funny because they would hold these town halls every time there were layoffs and there have been worse, more egregious layoffs since I've left. But like they would hold these town halls and then they would attempt to say the same things that all these companies do to like a group. Your employee is journalists. Like,
Yeah.
like it's our job to not buy this bullshit
Right.
when a company says it to us, but you're telling us the exact same thing. And it's so maddening and you feel like you're being gaslit, but you also feel like you're being disrespected.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I think that was what was so offensive was like I feel like you don't even understand the business that you're in.
Yeah.
It was so frustrating because whatever resources they got, and especially at like a Hollywood trade, because I was working in entertainment, like the amount of money that we would spend on like talent wrangling,
Right.
we know it's a little bit of a negotiation. Like you need to spend to look really enviable to get the stars on your cover so that people will subscribe, so that
Yeah.
you can keep the lights on. Like I get all of that, but there was just so little investment in the people who were actually creating the content
And doing the work. Yeah.
and I
Exactly.
hate that I'm calling it content, but like that's what they think of it as.
Yeah.
They think of it
Yeah.
as content.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
There's just like a devaluation of
Of the skills,
information,
of the
skills.
of the skills and the experience that journalists bring to the table, really. And of course, let's not forget the dilution of this business because of social media and that sort of, kind of explosion of content creation on social media. So therefore, a lot of people are starting to blur that line so much in terms of experience and knowledge. Like who has it, who doesn't matter.
Can I be honest? That's kind of why it has been so difficult for me to sort of lean into this idea of becoming like an independent journalist because I do feel like and recently I see because legacy journalism is eroding so badly that there's so many journalists like yourself who I deeply respect, and you can see that the skill and the experience is there in this space that makes me feel more comfortable because for a long time, because I've had the privilege of spending my entire career to date in full-time staff journalism. I've never
Yep.
been a freelancer for any extended period of time. I was sort of like, I myself was like, what is the difference? Or can people tell the difference between an independent journalist and a and a vlogger
Yeah.
or a content creator or a blogger? Because sometimes it was difficult for me to even pick my way through it. I realize now that I know more people, and I realize media literacy in this country is so low.
Terrible. It's terrible.
Shocking.
It's shocking. Yeah.
And these are
Yeah.
professionals who are
Yeah.
who know a lot about their field. I'm not talking about kids' media literacy. I'm talking about working Americans with professional white
Oh,
collar
yeah.
jobs.
Why do you think we're in the state we're in right now in this country? Because people cannot decipher between real information and misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah.
And these are educated people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we are in the state that we're in right now. And so journalism, again, getting back to the whole essence of journalism, the point of the work that we are doing is to get the information right and then get it out to the people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that is starting to, like you're saying, it's eroding, but also it's being restricted.
Yeah.
Right. We see what the White House is doing by kicking out wire services like AP and Reuters and Bloomberg. And then out of the Pentagon, they're kicking out the networks and newspapers and replacing them with, those other publications and other outlets that are more favorable to the administration. So when you start seeing that kind of activity, and I keep on repeating this to people, this is the beginning of an autocracy. This is how a dictatorship grows, because it's in the playbook. They want to control the media. What do you think this is all about? Right? And then when media companies, what most people also don't understand is the world's media is pretty much controlled by about 5 or 6 companies. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a fact, right? So that's been happening over the last couple of decades, and it's only getting worse, right? So now you have billionaires just in America alone who own some of the biggest networks and publications, like Bezos, right, with the Washington Post, like Rupert Murdoch and the Fox Empire. Yeah,
like Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong at
the LA Times.
All billion, and it's interesting because when they come in initially, Bezos owned the Post during the first Trump administration,
right?
And the whole "democracy dies in darkness" tagline, and it just felt like, okay, well, using your money for. If we need a billionaire to bail out, the press so that they can keep the lights on, fine.
That's what we were hoping.
But the announcement that Bezos made last week, where he said about the opinion pages, where he said that going forward, the Washington Post opinion section, and forgive me if you guys have already covered this, but going forward, we're only going to be our opinion page will specifically be used in promotion of what do you call it? Personal liberties and free markets.
That's right. Personal liberties
and free markets sounds like American ideals, like freedom and capitalism. But personal liberties and free markets is a dog whistle for libertarianism and unchecked post-capital. But that's the thing, it's so chilling because now you have this billionaire who has literally just said, and he, bounced off the opinion editor. He's like, bye, you're not here for this. Bye. It's his newsletter now.
Yep.
And who can fight that? And Trump made it so plain in his inauguration with that battalion of billionaires behind him.
Yep.
That this is officially an oligarchy.
Yes.
We are officially, our government has now officially changed
to an oligarchy. Yeah. Yes. And that's why.
On Wikipedia.
Right. I mean, and that's why people, I hope, are starting to see the light in terms of what is happening before our very eyes. That Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies, boys club, that's how they want to rule the world going forward, right? And the little people, the middle class, and those who are, trying to pay the bills, we don't matter, right? Yeah. And the way you suppress that even more is to control the media, because the media's job is to try to get this information out to the masses.
Yeah.
And that's becoming harder and harder. Because remember, during his first term, he called journalists the enemy of
He
the
coined
American
this
people.
super catchy phrase, fake news.
Fake news.
Once fake
Yep.
news entered the lexicon, right? Like Trump, and he is a master of language in the sense that there's something very primal about the way he communicates.
That would be a very nice way to say
That's the nicest thing I'll say about him.
Primal. Okay, that's a great way to put it, Rebecca. Yeah.
And so it's it lacks nuance in a way that perfectly it is really ideal for this sort of like attention starved, meme worthy like attention economy. Like
Yeah.
he puts something in a hash. He talks like a hashtag, and so because of that, his message can be disseminated quickly and easily.
That's for sure.
And absorbed, right?
That's
and so
for
fake
sure.
news, the fact that fake news started circulating in the lexicon,
Yeah.
it became a real concept.
Yep.
To really accelerate the erosion of trust in institutional media.
Yep. Exactly.
So that's one thing. The deliberate, concerted efforts to dilute trust.
But then to tag us as journalists, credible journalists, as the enemy of the people, that was also the beginning of the end for the trust in journalism, but also making not just trust, but making us the enemy. It's a very powerful term to use, right? Yeah. So therefore, when people are approached by journalists or when stories come out, you can easily just say, "Oh, we're not going to believe them because they're against us."
Right.
And
now I don't understand how you can have it both ways, because I also see ways in which the media is sort of either not able to, like, either doesn't have the resources to really fulfill its duty as the fourth estate, but in some ways. And again, when I speak of media, I'm talking about the people making the decisions, not the hardworking reporters who are just trying to, earn a living.
Yeah, good that you clarified that. Yeah, but that's very true.
Because of media ownership now.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have it both ways, guys. Like, you can't say fake news, fake media, but at the same time worship a guy who's best friends with the billionaires who are owning these outlets and now very directly controlling the content. Like, none of this, there's a logical fallacy here that just people are not pointing out.
No, but like you said, I'm glad you mentioned that, Rebecca, is that don't blame the people who are actually doing the work, right? Because they're not in control. Yeah. So, for instance, what really, really angered me was last week's announcement at MSNBC that they were getting rid of all these shows and these anchors, 7 of them, all anchors of color. I can't get more obvious than that, but really, that really told me that these corporate bosses at these media companies seem to be running scared, or at least they're making decisions to sort of kowtow a little bit to what's going on, right? Instead of standing firm and holding their positions.
MSNBC is under NBC Universal, which is under Comcast.
Right.
Like, the people who are ultimately making these decisions are not journalists.
Yeah.
They are business people who are looking at share price and looking at so TV news in particular, but I have seen how print media is, or print news is also trying to transit. It's like when you're chasing when ratings becomes your bottom line, it's very, very dangerous, because then information is not the core priority. It's entertainment. It's attraction. Right. And so, like,
and shareholders.
And shareholders. And also now you have a president where he is wielding the power of the federal government to make your life, to make your company suffer, right? So he could tie you up in like SEC, like trust invest. He can not approve your mergers. He can, do all these things. And so it's a little, I mean, it's like a mob shakedown.
It's totally a mob shakedown.
So there's a lot of that happen. So it's like,
yeah.
Everything, there's multiple factors, like everything is at play, their own corporate greed, their own fear over like actual direct threat and duress, shaky to non-existent personal commitments to DEI in the first place. Like, I loved what Rachel Maddow said on air about her colleague Joy Reid and really pushing back against her own network. But she's like the only human being at that company with the
who can do that.
Do that. I was listening to like one of the Puck podcasts, right? And Puck Media is co-founded by one of my former bosses, who I really respect as a journalist, Matt Bellany. But like, he is Puck very accurately reflects. They're really good at reporting about power because they sort of represent exactly what they're reporting on. Like, yes, they're journalists, but they're like 95% straight white dudes who kind of really only see things from that lens. So when they reported on that, I remember I was really mad because they kept talking about Joy Reid's ratings and how bad her ratings were. And I realized that, so that's also an issue, because I think that with media, and Puck is independent media, they're not establishment. But I also think identity matters. And I don't think that they see that. I really don't think, because they see identity when it comes to people like Joy Reid. But they don't see identity when it comes to their own identity and how that might be coloring their perception of things. But I think that that's something that I'm so sorry, this is a total tangent, but I promise, hopefully it's relevant, is that sometimes I see the way in which those at the top who are sort of governing and steering editorial decisions, who have massive influence, to them, politics is just a game. It's like they might as well be sports journalists. Where it's all this very dispassionate, like power, ratings, money. Well, this is what the Ledger said, and so this decision made sense. When people were talking about the MSNBC layoffs, it was sort of discrediting. It was discrediting to say, oh, it's all people of color. It's like, I feel like people will discredit you, May, when you point that out, because they'll be like, oh, she only sees color. She's so like, well, she doesn't understand ratings. She doesn't have business. Like, I got that kind of criticism when I was covering inclusion. Like, oh, you're not being rational.
Right.
You're just being so emotional about it.
So so let me ask you this then. I say it, and then that's how they would react. But if someone like Rachel Maddow said it, which she did, do they react differently?
Well,
because she's a white woman. However, she's a white gay woman.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. So there's, you're asking them to understand intersectionality.
That's what I'm saying. It's so if you're not a white, I'm not being racist here. This is just something that I think is important. But I think this is something important to point out. Right now, the current state that we're in right now, if you're a white, straight man, you're good. You're in a really good position. Other than that,
some of them will say that it's never been harder.
Right. I've heard that many times.
I have an explanation for this, but you go on.
Yeah, I've heard that many times. So going back to what you're saying, if they're only looking at it through that lens, no matter what position they're in, I think it has to do with the fact that, well, that's just the way it is. That's the way it always has been. So why else would they look at the world in any other way? Because it's that privilege that they've had. Now, you're right. I think a lot of white men and boys are complaining that they have it really bad, right? That the struggle is real.
The relative struggle is real. They don't have it as well as their fathers and grandfathers did. But that's not. We have to So I feel like that argument is always understood in absolute terms. Like it's always said, like, people who say that to me, they're like, it's never in history ever been easier to be a Black woman than a white man. Like, that is just not not a fact. Right?
Never.
That is a non-fact. That's an anti-fact. but it maybe is harder to be a white man in 2025 than it was in 1905.
Yeah, but what's okay?
I'll entertain that line of
I
thinking, but let's
I would
get this
enter,
straight here.
but that's the evolution of what's happening, what's been happening in this country as far as the makeup of this country, cultural changes, the equality of gender. Well, we're not there yet,
Yeah.
but I mean that's what happens when a society continues to evolve.
Yeah, and it also, and this is what's so heartbreaking about all this disinformation and misinformation, is because like everybody who is sort of really believing the lies about like isolationism and wanting to go back to some sort of like national monoculture is
Mm,
going to be good for us. It actually won't be.
right.
It won't be. Like, there was a big flu epidemic in the 1900s that killed so many kids, and so many people. You're going to lose out on so much of the innovation that comes from just having like all of the choice of the best of
Mind.
everything at your
Yeah.
disposal, and that
Yep.
will benefit your own life eventually as well. Does it mean like, sorry, you don't get 80% of the pie and you have to be happy with 70% of the pie for now?
Right. Right.
You know,
Right.
like, like it's okay. You still get pie.
Yeah.
And
That's right. But it's for some of these guys. I feel like they think it has to be all or nothing.
zero sum. And,
Yeah, zero sum.
it's,
So that's what frightens me the most about the direction we're heading in with this current administration.
yeah.
Last night, right now it's Wednesday, March 5th, and last night was the joint congressional address by Trump, and I watched the whole thing. And I had to stomach it, but I had to.
Almost 2 hours of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, holy moly. But I sat there and I just saw the picture of him at the podium, but then also Vance behind him and
Mike
what's
Johnson.
Mike Johnson,
Yeah.
three white guys, and I'm like, this is where we are.
Yeah.
This could be a picture taken from 1940. I mean, I just was like, wow, this is where we are.
And let's be clear. It's not because they are white and because they're men
Mm-hmm.
that is problematic. Like, it is a little bit of a shame. Like in 2025, you'd think that like 3 for 3 is
Yeah.
not such a slam dunk,
Right.
but it's for what they stand for.
Yes.
It's for, and it's for it's also for like, I mean, that was like, I don't even know. I just feel like I don't even know how to, when somebody is like not playing by the rules at all, like how do you even have a conversation about it? He's so deeply unserious as a
Yes.
person. He
Yes.
knows nothing of procedure, and it's at this point it's like whatever, decorum. He just doesn't understand how anything works.
No,
I don't
he
think
doesn't care.
knows that executive orders aren't like, it's just like printing your own paper currency.
No, he just loves seeing his gigantic signature. So
his big
yeah.
Sharpie signature.
Yeah.
He's just an overgrown child. But the thing that's like very troubling is I feel like have you heard that phrase sane washing?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay. It's a great, so, like whitewashing, right?
Yeah.
So when we whitewash something, we are sort of like making it more palatable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're diluting the sin,
Right.
the black mark. Sane washing is something that people have said that establishment media is doing to Trump because they cover him like they would cover any other candidate. They're behaving
Yes.
very much normally and
Cordially, civilly. Yeah. Yes.
him.
Oh
So when
God,
you're
that's
covering
interesting.
so like literally now that you know this concept, like look at how it's been covered. Like people, they just sort of like report. So
It's so true.
in the headlines.
Okay.
So much decorum in the headlines.
Okay, I'm so glad you shared this because it makes me fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I watched this and I understand they're trying to stay somewhat objective or at least be professional.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that, but the fact that your point, the sane washing, it makes it too normal, right? I think that's the complaint right now with the Democrats. They're acting too normal. This is not a normal situation. We are not in normal times. So therefore, I was proud of Senator Al Green of Texas who got up and shook his cane last night and was screaming and yelling because he was outraged.
Yeah.
And of course they kicked him out.
Of
right?
course. And again, this is where like taking the high road and like, you know, playing by the rules, it like, look, we're journalists and there's going to be certain like ethics that we play by, but you're like actually like you are literally the Democratic Party. You're literally the opposition party.
That's right.
So what is your fucking job right now?
Exactly.
Like the fact that Al Green, like this is not a hypothetical scenario. Al Green at the State of the Union, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I just realized the same last name.
I know, you're right.
At the State of the Union.
Did the same thing.
Like, did the same thing. And like, it's just, I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene got kicked out.
No, neither did Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert also did the same thing. So none of them got kicked out before.
Why are you like, I just, like those, okay, this is my, those fucking paddles.
Oh, it was like
auctioneer
paddles? They were like pickleball paddles. I'm like what the fuck are with the paddles? Yeah.
Like so
I know.
Like demoralizing isn't even like it's just this is the best you could come up with? Exactly.
And you see on the Republican side, I saw gestures that they were making when Al Green was getting kicked out. And some of these senators, they were going, out of here. You know, just being so fucking rude. And I'm like, Democrats, why aren't you getting up and defending this?
At this point, we're facing an existential threat. We are facing an existential threat.
That's right.
And I don't think that it's being confronted with the sort of amount, the proper amount of intensity and seriousness of it. And so with journalists, as well as, you know, establishment politicians, as well as just ordinary Americans, I think if I was an editor, if I was at an outlet right now and I was an editor, literally I would commission an article right now. I want to talk to a geopolitical expert to explain to me how South Korea, the government, like talk to me about South Korean culture and current politics and how the president could declare martial law in 24 hours. You have bipartisan representatives like, you know, just wholeheartedly condemning that. You had everybody take to the streets and that guy was out of there within a month, you know, under a month. I want to really understand what are the cultural and historical and societal differences that make the United States incapable of anything approaching that kind of response.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like, we're like frogs boiling in water, but the water is like 175 degrees at this point.
Yeah.
Like this isn't warm water right now.
Yeah, we're on the edge.
We're really on the edge. And I don't know if it's because the United States, I think it's, we're a little bit too big to fail, where you still have wide swaths. Like we could turn off our cameras and we'll still go about our days. And
I think America has been comfortable for a very, very long time. Americans have. Okay. And this is what my Korean mother says to me all the time. Okay. She's 88. So she has lived through the Japanese occupation, war, you know, and poverty. And all the things that come along with that. Right. And so she's always said Americans are comfortable.
Yeah.
They've never really suffered like other places have. And that's true. And Americans might push back on that and say, oh, we went through the Depression and we went through Pearl Harbor and the war, but nothing
the ones
like
who are alive right now.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think there's a level of comfort that this country has had for a very long time that makes it unrecognizable what's happening. So they don't think I think most Americans don't think we're ever going to get there.
Yeah.
It's ever going to get that bad. Right. And it may not. Who knows? It may not. However, with what's happening now, with Doge and Elon Musk and the haphazardness of what they're doing, and then Trump's, you know, just unpredictable behavior, and all the oligarchs who are going to get a huge tax cut while everybody else is going to have to pay, that is going to lead to major destruction. And not to mention the national parks that are probably going to be fucking sold off.
Yeah.
You know, and the destruction of the environment. I mean, it goes on and on. So I think it's going to be a slow deterioration. Like you said, it's like the frog.
Yeah.
We're slowly being boiled.
And the news media has been kneecapped in
Yeah.
so many ways.
Yes.
So sorry, I'm trying real hard to bring it back because I know taking us on tangents, and so I'm trying to bring us back.
Not really. It's all related.
Like I just feel like we're so people already don't trust us.
Yeah.
We're already being it's financially, it's such that the same people, like the same people are running everything at the top.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So the same people in the White House are the same people who
Yeah.
own all the major papers and who all own the cable networks and who all own like every outlet, and then
they're all in bed together. Yeah.
they're all in bed together. There's also just a flooding of the zone of just like, there's just too much, like tech has provided sort of a wonderfully democratic platform, but when it's unregulated, especially the way it is now,
Yeah.
it's just there's a flood of things, so that there's no way for anybody, even well-meaning people, like even for me. I mean, I am a trained and experienced journalist, and nowadays I have to spend some time like figuring out, like tracing, sourcing for things.
That's right. Yeah.
Like it's a discipline. It's really sad. Can I give another example of how hard it is for like? Recently, I had a friend who works in the industry, not a journalist, a producer friend, because we've been talking about job woes. And she was like, whoa, have you thought about writing for Forbes? So I was like, okay, well, not recently, but back in 2020, I had a conversation. Somebody put me in touch with the editor from Forbes to, because I was laid off, and it was very nice. And again, the editors there, they're trying their best. Okay. They're trying their best. But here was what they do, and Forbes, you might notice, is quite prolific, right? Like there's a lot
it is
on there, and there's like a lot of people
definitely
post. Okay, here's how it worked. Mm-hmm. Here's how it worked, at least in 2020, which is the last time I talked to them. Is they have this thing. It's basically kind of like a contributors network. Okay. And it's a deal. You get a stipend for like a minimum number of posts that you put on their network, on the platform, right? Here was the payment. If you write 5 articles a month, like
full articles,
300 to 700 word posts. So these are small stories, but 700. So 700 words gets you to like a good mid-size article. Okay. But whatever, 300 to 7, 5 articles a month, $250
for 5 articles.
Yeah. $50.
Shut the fuck up. No, that's not
story. Forbes.
Are you fucking kidding
me?
So
people don't understand. Like,
Holy shit.
On the outside, you look and you're like, oh, I got published, or this was in Forbes.
Right.
Like,
it's Forbes. Of course.
Like, who can afford that?
No. And you know what? Here, for people who don't understand, writing one article, 500 words, 700 words, but even 500 words, that's not something you can just whip out in like 30 minutes. Okay. Let's just make that clear.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Not if it's going to be anything of substance, right?
No.
So, if you're like 500 to 1,000 words, right, for a story, you're doing, any good article, you should have at least 2 to 3 interviews, right?
That's right.
2 to 3 interviews. I usually, because in order to get everything you need, because, you're doing 15 minutes to like 45 an hour for an interview, right?
Yep.
You're transcribing, you're going through
and
it.
You have to go through all of that.
Figuring out what's, and then you're crafting, you're writing. And I am not a very fast writer.
Mm-hmm.
I do think my end result is good, but it's because it fucking takes me a fucking long time. It takes a really long time. And so that is, I could easily actually, I tabulated this recently because I did a feature. Oh man, I should have this ready. But okay. But anyway, it takes hours. This is easily like
hours and days. I mean, to write a full article, yeah, sure.
Because
write a story. Again, because you have to find the people you're going to interview, got to schedule that, do the interview, go through the interview, go through all your facts, information, and then craft the story. Yeah.
I wrote a 1,300 word story for.
Okay, Big story.
freelance story. Yeah, so that was a pretty long feature. I
Hmm.
wrote it for freelance. I already said that. I wrote it, after I'd been laid off. I would say nowadays you're pretty. It's average to good if you can get $1 a word. A lot of
Okay.
places do not pay $1 a word, right? And you're like, oh, okay, $1 a word, that's not too bad. But like again, think about the amount of time it takes.
Yeah.
So I tabulated that like over 1,000 word feature that I wrote for THR. Because I actually calculated the number of hours I worked on that story. And that did not count actually the travel, like everything that I had done prior to me getting laid off, which
Hmm.
included all of the interviews. Yeah, I had done every single interview prior to that, and then a little bit of
Ah.
preliminary transcribing. But
Okay.
but most of the transcribing and the writing happened after I got laid off, and I spent 33 hours on that story. The math doesn't math. If you're getting $500, even $1,000, like at the end of that,
No, that's for
33
that
hours is
much
very
work.
close to
For
a
that
work
much
week.
work. Yeah.
It's close to a
Exactly.
work week.
So this is the point that needs to be driven home to everyone who's listening and watching, is that I know that it's easy to think that the news is free, because it is, right? Oftentimes it is, because you open your phone and you read an article or whatever, and then anytime there's a paywall, people bitch and moan, right? They're like, shit, I can't read this article because I have to pay for it,
Right.
or you have to pay for a subscription. Well, there's a reason for that. Because people behind those stories, whether on television or in print, we work really hard to get those stories to you. And so again, where we are now is that everybody expects things for free,
Yeah.
and they don't realize the value. Going full circle, right? That's what we
Mm-hmm.
started with. A lot of people don't understand the value of what journalists and journalism does for society. Um, and
Yeah.
that's the sad part.
I
That's the
don't
sad, and it continues to be devalued.
Exactly. It continues to be devalued. I think it's one of those things where you don't really understand the need for it until
Until it's
until it's
gone.
gone, or
Yeah.
until the horrible ramifications happen, right? Like
Yeah.
you look at so many different I mean, you look at like anti-vaxxers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you look at people who believe like crazy QAnon things, or like even like I will say, and maybe this is relevant to some of the your Asian American audience, is like, my mom's whole side of the family, is like really only consumes Chinese language media.
Mm.
And what I've noticed like my brother and I just had a conversation about this yesterday. In 2016, I was able to keep a pretty tight lid on things, from at least with my mom's information diet. And she was pretty clear on like Trump and who he was and everything. And my mom, like my whole family is very Christian, so like, again, there's that bent towards,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
a lot of things that evangelical. And so, but my mom was really good. I was like, Mom, Trump is not a Christian. Don't be fooled. But because her
Yeah.
friends were like starting to be
Yeah. Yeah.
Trumpy
Yeah.
through the evangelical opening, right? Very
That's right.
well-meaning church ladies.
Yeah.
It has been really hard. My brother was telling me like, now he had a conversation with my mom over the weekend about the Zelensky meeting with Trump.
Oh.
And
Uh-huh.
my mom was saying things like, well, like Ukraine should just, I mean, they were Russia to begin with, and they should go back to, they should just go back and be one country, one Russia. And I mean, a lot of this is, I mean, my family is Chinese.
Yeah. So it's coming
Dot,
from the Chinese
dot, dot,
media.
dot, right?
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
how,
Sure.
how she's seeing, like, and my brother's like, she's just on her phone all day reading like
Damn.
who the fuck knows what Chinese language media sources. And I
Yeah.
get some of that. Like I'll go into the line chat for my Chinese side of the family, and I'll see like it's straight. Again, this is how bad media literacy is. Like sometimes my mom will send me things to fact check, thankfully, and she'll
Oh.
send me something that looks like a U.S. newscast. But May, you'll laugh. I've received videos that are like, it's like a white person speaking English in front of a desk, with something that looks like a real chyron, but it's just like a fake chyron. It's just like a made up acronym, and they're just spouting whatever talking points the CCP wants to, because they're even
No.
subtitled in Chinese, and there's
Oh.
so much
Wow.
concerted disinformation. I
Yeah.
have my criticisms about, like, God knows I've already slagged off establishment media enough, like, in this hour, but like, there's a reason why certain things exist. There are still checks and balances.
Yeah, barely.
There's still barely. Yeah. There's still a degree of, there's at the very least, there's liability.
But even that is hanging in the balance. I mean,
It's
really, let's be
threadbare.
honest, right? Let's be
It's
honest. But
threadbare.
I mean, look, at least today, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that that they were going to reject Trump's request to deny the $2 billion in foreign aid. Right? Remember, they were trying to cancel that.
Right.
But at least that show tells me that the legal the legal aspect of our checks and balances, they're still trying to barely hold the line. Now, I will say I read about this because I wanted to understand exactly what this meant. It means that the Supreme Court just doesn't want to take on the responsibility to make this final judgment, so it's being passed back down to the lower courts to decide. But at least there's some semblance of some sort of consciousness with some of the Supreme Court justices. Two of the conservative ones voted.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the more
Right.
liberal
They would
judges.
have to for the 5-4.
Yeah, 5-4. So that just gives me a little bit of hope that maybe the checks and balances still somewhat exist. And if we can hold that line, maybe we have a chance. And again, for journalism, again, coming back to the original subject, I really hope and pray that journalism and journalists like you and me and others, who realize the importance of it and what we do matters, that we hold the line to somehow. Yeah. It's easier said than done, given the circumstances we're in, given the restrictions and given the squeeze that we're all feeling. But I do see independent journalism, or at least some of these other outlets that aren't affiliated with the major legacy media companies, I can see that they're trying to push back. Right?
I'm really, like, again, my thinking on this has really changed a lot over the past few months. And I think that independent journalism is, instead of sort of again, the sort of like the space where also rants are relegated. It really is sort of I really think it's very exciting. It's scary and it's very hard to do.
It is.
It is where a lot of the real work is being done now. I mean, if I can make a suggestion, for example, like one of the Substacks that I've been reading is The Handbasket by a writer, a journalist named Marissa Kabas, I think is her name.
Okay.
I started following her sometime last year, and I've noticed that she's picked up more of a following since then.
I'm writing this down.
I think it's short for Hell in a Handbasket, but it's the Handbasket. And it's great. She writes about a lot about politics, and what I'm realizing too, and again, this is me sort of starting to shed my training as sort of an establishment journalist, where I've always had opinions about things, but I've always been very leery of like voice, in my own work, because that was just how you're trained, right?
That's right.
You're a journalist. If you're an opinion writer, you're an opinion writer. And those lines admittedly are blurrier in the world of independent journalism. But I do think, especially after what we saw at the State of the Union yesterday, is desperate times call for reframed, like, new measures, and I really do not believe, I really do think that this whole like respectability politics way is only going to continue to enable these bad actors.
Yes.
I think that journalism, I've been thinking a lot about this myth of objectivity in journalism. And I think that sort of quote unquote objective standard in journalism always was just a euphemism for the white, straight male status quo. Those are the people who are considered to have objective views, and everybody else is just being too much of an activist. Oh, you're an activist journalism. You're an
Yeah.
activist journalist, or whatever, or you're letting your personal views, cloud your objectivity. I I've never believed in that. Do you remember that Times editor who says that he doesn't vote because he's a journalist?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't believe in that.
I
Do you know
don't
what I
I
mean?
don't either. No,
I
no,
think
no.
in
I
order to
agree
be
with
a
you.
good journalist, you have to bring your entire
You have to
participation in this
ex-
society to bear.
that, and I would teach that to my journalism students. About objectivity. I said, it's impossible to be totally objective as a human being, first and foremost. And secondly, as a journalist, you should bring your lived experiences, to covering stories, because that's the human being that you are. And then that's the experience and the knowledge you're bringing to the
Yeah.
table. If it was all the same type of person covering every piece of, every story, then it would be so
You
one-sided,
really only
really.
need AI for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. So I agree with you, Rebecca. I think we're at a time where we now have to shed that idea of total fairness and civility and decorum, and we just have to, rise above. That's why Michelle Obama, I think, finally said, oh, to hell with the when they go low, we go
Mm-hmm.
high. You saw that she took the gloves
Yeah.
off during this last
Yeah. Yeah.
campaign,
Yeah.
right? So even
Yeah.
Michelle Obama was like, oh, fuck this, right? So I think that's where we are. And I really hope that people start realizing that this is now a battle about values.
Mm-hmm.
It's about what's right or wrong truly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not about staying on the side of objectivity and being fair, because right now things are incredibly unfair and we see it. So that's when you really do have to take a stand, even as a journalist, because that's our job. If we see injustice, that's why I got into journalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was inspired by the tool of journalism to call out injustices and, give voice to the voiceless. That's what our job should be. And right now, more than ever in my entire career as a journalist, I've never seen a time when journalists should stand up
Yeah.
and call out evil and call out wrongdoing and call out unfairness. I mean, that's what I think we should be doing, particularly since our politicians are not. They're trying, but not
Yeah,
so much.
no, they're not
Yeah,
doing a good job of it at all, at all.
yeah,
I agree. It's never been more critical. Journalism has never been more critical, but it's also never been more imperiled than it
yes,
is now. And so,
that's right.
I would just, as an entreaty to your listeners, I would say, it's so easy. I do it too, and so it's very tempting to just, whenever you read something, take it at face value and then pass it on
Yeah,
uncritically. Especially if it's something you agree with, or
yeah,
especially if it's anything that like inspires intense emotion. So it's either something like, yes, I agree with this, or like, oh my God, did you see this? Those things, those were whoever made that meme initially or started that rumor, if it's like, it was engineered to create a response so
yeah.
that they can like sort of gain virality. So see if you can find that information replicated somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so
I
check
mean,
that.
that's the hope, Rebecca, but you do know that the average person
I know.
does not have the patience nor the time,
They
or do
do
they
not.
want the interest to do that source checking, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. So therein lies the
Yeah.
issue of misinformation, disinformation. That's how it happens, right? So
Talk to your
look,
friends, talk to your family.
I wasn't expecting to have answers today, but I did expect to have this kind of conversation with you, which is exactly what we did. And I think this needs to continue at some point, because I think this is really an important topic to discuss, but just because you can see that there's so many related things that
Hmm.
this is a spider web. Everything is connected this
It's
way.
all connected.
This conversation will definitely continue.
Thanks. Yes. Maybe over a
Yeah.
glass of wine.
Yeah, I think that actually might be better. But but hey, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on and having this important chat, because yeah, we need to be very open about this. And hopefully it was informative to those of you who are listening and watching. Let's hope, right?
Yeah. 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 Thanks for caring, people. Like, thank you for
Yeah.
caring for journalism. We're trying our
Yeah.
best out here.
Yeah, and yeah, well, I'll do one last plug. If you can support journalism, support, the different publications and networks that you watch, but especially the independent journalists and
Ooh.
the outlets. Yeah.
If I can make like, for example, yes,
Yeah.
support the independent journalists. There's some great independent journalism happening out there. So if there's a writer that you like on a newsletter or Substack, subscribe to them. Even if
Subscribe.
you're not ready to be a paid subscriber, a lot of them,
Exactly.
it's helpful for them to get to see the follower counts. Also, nonprofit journalism. Nonprofit
Yes.
journalism is a great area in which you can support. I really like ProPublica. They
Yes.
do
They do
amazing
great work.
long form investigative journalism. It is
Yep.
their work is so important. So consider, if you want to withdraw. I unsubscribed from the Washington Post after the Bezos opinions thing. It was just a personal decision I made, but now I have some free money that I'm thinking
You
about.
can put towards somewhere else.
Maybe put it towards ProPublica or something like
Yeah.
that. And so these are all things that you can do to support, the quality journalism, and also in a more direct way.
It does make a difference. Don't think it doesn't make it. It really does. Even just a little bit of a contribution, or even the subscription, even the just signing up for a subscription, it does make a difference, because then it tells that person or that outlet that what they're saying or doing is reaching an audience, right? I mean, even for me, when we do our show or I put out a post and I see that people are responding, it gives me an indication, okay, people are out there listening, and they're being informed. So it does make a difference. So give people that feedback, if nothing else. Yeah.
100%.
All right. Okay, Rebecca. That was a lot, but I totally appreciate it.
Likewise.
You take care, and we will definitely chat again.
I can't wait.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. This was Shoes Off Inside one-on-one with Rebecca Sun. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.